Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program of the Atheist Society of Knoxville and Rationalists at East Tennessee, where science is real and gods don't matter. I am Riv.
And I'm Faithless Forrest, and we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and unfettered by supernatural beliefs.
Last week we spoke about telescopes, and on today's show we want to talk about the sky. We almost touch on astrology and answer the question, what is the zodiac? But first, I want to ask viewers, how do we sound out there? Please let us know any audio programs and tell us your cable television channel and which system.
All right, and now we want to tell viewers about the show's sponsors.
Right.
I guess it's me. The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup or at a bar or eatery. Tonight's meetup is at the still kind of new location, Flats and Taps, 7403 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee. It's just a block or so east of the Westtown Mall. When you get to the meetup, look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table. And as Matt Delahunty at Atheist Experience says, everyone is welcome to our happy hour for food, drink, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regularly monthly meetings. The first and third Sunday mornings of each month are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. The second Sunday, we hold the Skeptics Book Club. On the fourth Sunday, we are mixing it up, sometimes with a potluck get-together in a member's home, which we call a reflections meeting.
All right, and later in the show, we will give you our websites to visit for additional details, including times and locations. I didn't prep any in the news. Did you make any in the news?
Some other thoughts discussed, but probably for another show.
I guess something that's kind of in the news we better mention before we forget, and that is the Rationalists of East Tennessee will have their annual public lecture on April 30th at 2 p.m. in I think it's the Goins Administrative Building
Auditorium, something.
at Pellissippi Technical Community College, and our speaker will be, Hemant Mehta, and his topic will be why young people are leaving religion. For viewers who may not have heard of Hemant, he made quite a name for himself when he did what?
He made the podcast, the series, the blog, the Friendly Atheist.
He does the Friendly Atheist. I became aware of him due to another activity, and that is he sold his soul on eBay.
That's what it was. It was that book. Yeah.
Yep. So if you want to hear Hemant speak, this will be great. He's originally from the Knoxville area, but I guess he lives up in Chicagoland these days. So once again, that's April 30th. All righty.
There's some holiday coming up. I forget what it was now. I guess it will come to me later on. But it's the National Day of something.
The National Day of Reason is coming up on the first Thursday in May. The National Day of Reason is a response to the unconstitutional National Day of Prayer, which has turned into a government entanglement problem. And in fact, the Rationalists and the Atheist Society of Knoxville will be having a picnic at Tyson Park on that afternoon. Assuming that the pavilion reservation makes it my way, I think I'm waiting for that to come in the mail. Yeah. But we still have some time to make that happen. All righty. So let's move ahead to our program. We're going to have the Zodiac here on Freethought Forum TV, and we got a slide for that. So there we are. Look at that. It might viewers might be jarred by the sudden change in our studio. Yeah. So the Zodiac. What is the Zodiac? That is the question, and we have some slides that'll help us with that. The Zodiac are these things that you see sometimes in the paper. What is that section of the paper where we see the zodiac?
It's the horoscopes. Is it?
The horoscopes. Yeah. I thought you might say astrology. Section.
Yeah. I figured they draw their conclusions from that sometimes, but
yeah. And so what the zodiac is it's a place in the sky where things happen, and that in antiquity it wasn't understood, but they were interested in it. And actually, we need to back up a slide or two. We're looking for the one that says, "What is the zodiac?" And it's got a list of the 12 or 13 signs of the zodiac.
Should be one of the first ones.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll move along as best we can. So we have Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, and then in parentheses I'm going to put Ophiuchus, Sagittarius, Capricornus, Aquarius, and Pisces. Now, if you get the paper, you won't see that Ophiuchus thing, and we'll talk a little bit more about it.
I wasn't familiar about that one.
Ah, there we are. We got the slide. And you'll notice there's 13 when you do it that way. Well, so the next slide here gives us, so these are kind of hard to remember, that list. If I asked most people what are the signs of the zodiac, they might remember their birth sign. Mm-hmm. What's your birth sign?
Aries.
And I'm a Pisces. And what do we think that means?
I think, the symbol that comes to head is the crabs, is the Pisces. Or that's the Cancer.
Pisces has 2 fish in it.
2 fish, okay.
And you said yours was Aries.
Which is the ram.
A ram. So does that mean that you like to hit your head against other males' heads? I mean, rams, they're called rams because I think they do that.
It's interesting. I read, it's one of those confirmation biases type things. You read into it and you read, oh, this individual is passionate and has a fiery temper and so on.
I could be that.
Yeah. And then so the more people read the horoscope and so on, they read it, it's almost, they subconsciously are kind of training themselves to, I need to be more like my horoscope is telling me to be like. In some cases. That can be dangerous. But
all righty. So now we're looking for the next slide that says, what is the horoscope? And it's got the explanation underneath it. Or what is the zodiac? What is the zodiac? All right, there we go. That's the one. So what we've got here is a mnemonic. That list is really hard to remember, but we've got a mnemonic, and perhaps you can read the mnemonic for us.
Okay. So we have the ram, which is...
just read the sentence kind of as fast as you can.
The ram bull twins crab liverish... Okay, let me get this out.
You weren't practiced.
No. The ramble twins crab liverish scampions often are good water fish.
So it's scaly scorpions.
Scaly scorpions.
Often. Notice I put that in parentheses again. Are good water fish. So this is a mnemonic, and I didn't originate this. I found it on the Wikipedia page on the zodiac, and I thought it was just a delightful thing. So what we see is that ram, all right, now go through it a word at a time.
Okay.
And that is just leads into the sentence. Next word?
Ram.
Okay, so ram is a male sheep. They've got the horns that are curled back, and they ram one another. And the Greek word for that was Aries.
Aries. God of war.
Say again?
God of war. Or God of love and...
I assume it's the same Aries that's the god of war, and rams are certainly kind of warlike with other male sheep. And it's the first sign in the zodiac. We'll remember to talk more about that. That was your sign, right?
Yes.
Okay. Next.
Bull.
Bull. So bull is for Taurus. Taurus the bull. And a lot of people have heard of that one. And that one's an easier one in the sky to see as well. Next word.
Twins.
Twins. So twins is Gemini. Gemini is I assume once again it's probably a Greek phrase for these twins, Castor and Pollux, and In fact, there are two stars. The two brightest stars in that constellation are called Castor and Pollux. There's a mnemonic for that, well, or a memory aid for it, and that is that the westernmost one, which rises first from the eastern horizon, is Castor, and Pollux follows. So they're apparently they lined up in alphabetical order, like we did in grade school.
Right. I just think of Cap or something that comes to mind, you know. But
Alrighty. So after the twins, we have
Crab.
And crab is Cancer, and it is drawn with a symbol of a crab. It's funny, when we hear the word cancer, what do we think of?
Sickness.
A terrible disease. And they are actually related. The oldest, or the prototype disease that was called cancer is actually breast cancer, because it tends to grow in a mass that looks like a crab, and this was known in antiquity. All right, the next word is going to be awkward. It'll take the most explanation.
Liverish.
So liverish is an adjective. It means something like a person whose behavior is controlled by their liver. And that's not going to be one that is like strong and fearsome, as in Braveheart, or intellectual. Liverish means, I think it has a connotation of meaning something like jaundice as well. And maybe timid and not forceful. But it's actually a way to jam together two words out of the Zodiac, and that is the L for Leo and V for Virgo. So say liverish is Leo and Virgo.
Never thought of it that way.
All righty.
Then we have scaly.
Scaly. And that's for Libra. Oh, you know, we could bump ahead. Well, no, we'll get to them. We got some pictures to help. So Libra is scales, and there are a couple of them up in the sky. And once it's pointed out to you, you can see them. A lot of these things are like that once they're pointed out, you can see them. After the scales,
scorpions.
And that is lifted right out of the Zodiac, Scorpius.
Yes.
Then we come to the word in parentheses.
Often.
So often begins with an O, and that is a constellation that's not in the traditional ancient zodiac, which is Ophiuchus. Not many people have heard of Ophiuchus, but technically the ecliptic goes through it, and so we put it there in parentheses. Next.
Well, if I could say for a moment, it also reminds me of the Chinese, how the cat, it's said that the rat tricked the cat out of the Zodiac, and that was the 13th.
Aha.
Of that. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a whole thing about that. But then you have R.
R. This is kind of a stretch again. It begins with the letter A, and that's for archer, because Sagittarius is an archer. Sagittarius is also one of two half-man, half-horses in the sky. Do you know what a half-man, half-horse is?
A centaur.
A centaur. But, of course, there's another constellation in the sky called Centaurus, so the second centaur has to be called something else. He is Sagittarius, which is an archer. All right, next.
Good.
Good starts with a G, and that's like goat, as in sea goat, and the sea goat is Capricornus.
Okay.
All righty.
And then you have water.
Water, as in, what do we keep fish in? An aquarium, and we have the Aquarius sign. So that's the way we get the tie-in. And finally?
Fish.
Which is what we have in the sky, Pisces, the fish.
Right.
So we've now gone all the way around the zodiac, and the sun travels through this region in the sky, and it takes 1 year to do so. All right, so let's advance the slide to the next one, the shot of the Wikipedia page. The Wikipedia page explains that The zodiac is an ancient concept. The zodiac we know of, we largely inherit through the Greeks. But some of the patterns of stars in the sky are referenced in even pre-Greek mythology. And in particular, the oldest mythology that I know of would be Sumerian. And they talk about a bowl of heaven. And why, look, in our mnemonic we have
A bull. Yeah,
ram
cool.
bull. And I think they're one and the same. All righty. So let's move on to another one that's entitled, What is the Zodiac? And it derives from a Greek word, zodiacus. Sorry, that's Latin. Zodiacus, which in turn comes from Greek, which is, I'm not going to try and pronounce it. I would probably hurt myself, which means circle of animals.
Huh.
So we have zo, which is the animal part, and the diakos or something, I guess, is the circle. So if we advance the slide, we'll finally get our circle of animals. Whoop. There we go. So this is a drawing that depicts the Earth in the center, and then all of these animals in a circle around the Earth. And they're in the order in which the sun moves around. There's little arrows there which probably aren't going to show up on the screen. But you'll notice how there's a line that's drawn through them, and they progress from one to the other. So this is the animal circle, the zodiac, or, well, I won't try the Greek pronunciation. Let's advance the slide here, and we're going to come back, and we've got those words again. Why don't you say the words?
In the mnemonic, or just, okay, so we've got Aries,
Go down.
Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Ophiuchus, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces.
So, ram, bull, twins, crab, liverish, scaly scorpions often are good water fish.
Very nice.
All righty. Let's move ourselves to the next slide. Oops, I ran ahead. So there we were practicing it again. Let's advance again to the one with the clay tablet. All right. So this is over my head is an example of a clay tablet from something like at least 1,000 years BC, and it has a description of Babylonian zodiac, and it includes a star catalog and something that I'm afraid if I looked it up once I've forgotten, this mulapin. And so we know from antiquity that, we now know from this that people were interested in the stars and told stories about them in antiquity. And what's maybe not appreciated is that the Sumerians and Babylonians had begun making records of when stars were visible and the seasons. And from that, the ancient Greeks were able to figure out that the zodiac was shifting relative to the seasons. It's referred to as the progression of the zodiac. The ancient Sumerians didn't make these records thinking, well, what if it's shifting? We'll keep these records so that people who follow us can figure it out. They made records for their own reasons, but the act of making records lets people discover this change over time. Now, the ancient Greeks figured this out at something like 500 BC, which is nearly half of recorded history ago. And they had records that come from early history, at least 1,000 years before them, if not maybe 1,500, probably not a full 2,000. Did I sense a question coming?
It just reminded me when you talked about the seasons. The thing just rushed through my head about. I think a fun little artifact is how we get Persephone in the seasons.
Okay.
It's interesting. So Zeus and his wife
Hera,
right? They had a daughter, and she was promised to Hades.
Okay.
Without telling his wife. So one day, when the daughter, I forget, Demeter, someone, I forget the name, was out in the fields, and Hades comes up, takes her away to underworld.
It's Persephone.
Persephone. Right.
Yes.
Persephone, that's the exact name of it, right? So Persephone, taking the underworld, of course, there's a little confrontation going down. So Zeus goes down there and says, "We need to sort this out. I didn't tell my wife, and I made a promise to you. What are we going to do about this?" So Hades, being a clever chap, gives Persephone an apple, and she takes the apple. She consumes 6 seeds, and there's different interpretations of it. But one of them has that for each of the 12 seasons, half of them, 6 seeds, she has to stay below in the underworld, and that's when the above world goes through a winter. And then when she's above, that's when the world goes through a warm season. And that's where you get the seasons, well, at least the cold and the warm seasons.
So Persephone's mom is sort of in mourning and neglecting her duties as Mother Nature. I think I've heard that it's Demeter is the mother.
That's what, yeah.
But you know, Zeus was he may have had a wife, but that didn't stop him from exploring around.
Right, and because the Titans themselves, I mean, it's pretty goric past, pretty violent. Anyway, but yeah.
All righty. So let's advance to the next slide that looks similar with the clay tablet, but it's got a thing on the right. So right over Rev's head is something interesting. This is the Zodiac of Dendera. This is somewhere in the 1st century A.D., and it is in the ceiling of an Egyptian tomb. And we've got another slide. This is just is a black and white image. There's another slide that's been colorized, and this kind of helps it. So between us, here over my finger, is a man holding a staff, and then if I can see this correctly, I think in front of him is a bull. That's Taurus again. The man holding the staff we would recognize as Orion, and what the ancient Egyptians did is they made him into the god Amun, who is kind of their super god. And so what we see is that they took their own ideas that would predate the Greek zodiac, and then they just sort of stamped them onto a zodiac that we would largely recognize as Greek. And what's neat about these things are all in the right order, the way we would recognize them, and so, you know, there's this sort of commonality between our culture, which still publishes these horoscope things in the newspaper today, and what wealthy ancient Egyptians wanted to do. So
one could say it's a very old trade.
Yes. Well, having spent time out under a dark sky, looking at patterns in stars, it becomes useful to know this stuff. And it's useful for 2 reasons. The actual exact placement of stars in our sky is random. I mean, they're moving and they're changing over time. Within a human lifetime, they don't change noticeably. Within a human lifetime, they change measurably, but not noticeably. But if you want to navigate your way around them, it helps to imagine that there's some patterns up there. And then what you do is you concoct stories that you can tell as a reminder. So what's the reminder we've been working on today? You're going to read it again.
Okay. Something
It's
Okay,
right
it's
on the
there.
top of your page.
All right. The Ramble twins, crab liverish, scaly scorpions often are good fish.
Waterfish.
Water are often
All right.
water fish. Yeah.
So, by telling these tales about the things in the sky, a modern amateur astronomer or professionals can learn their way around the sky, and because the map is now a story in your head. It doesn't have to be a piece of paper. And what I noticed long ago was that people would come to our star parties, and when you would have chance to mention that, oh, we're looking in Aries right now, or we're looking in Sagittarius, and if that was someone's birth sign, they would always get excited about that one.
Yeah.
And so some years ago, I realized, I need to know this in order. And boy, that turned out to be a useful thing, because it's given me a full reference all the way around the sky, and then the things above and below it have gotten easier to learn. And so what started out as me just wanting to, let's say, one-up the astrologers by knowing more about the sky than they do, has turned into a very useful thing for learning my way around. So let's move to the next slide that has a screenshot of the planetarium program. So there's a free planetarium program I use. It's Carte de Ciel, which means in French, Chart of the Skies. Well, you can't really tell much on that slide. This is set for ecliptic coordinates. Maybe this would be a good time for you to ask me, what's this ecliptic all about?
What is this ecliptic all about?
The ecliptic is the zodiac. It's the central path of the zodiac, and it's the place in the sky where eclipses take place. Eclipses are where something like the Earth passes in front of the moon and casts a shadow on it, creating a lunar eclipse. And I assume you remember my talking about last week what's going to happen on August 21st of this year?
A total solar eclipse.
A solar eclipse. So this is where the moon passes in front of the sun and blocks the direct sunlight of the sun. And this happens in the sky where the ecliptic is. The sun is, by definition, where the ecliptic is. The moon is close to the ecliptic. If this was the plane of the orbit of the Earth around the sun, which is the ecliptic, the moon is tilted by about 5 degrees. So the moon is sometimes about, well, half the month it's above, half the month it's below. And the axis where they intersect slowly actually rotates. I think it rotates like with an 18-year period.
No, because we're tidally locked, right, with the face of the moon.
Yes. And this rotation of it's called the line of nodes, the place where the planes intersect, is related to tidal pull. I've never heard an explanation that allows me. I've never heard an explanation I understand. Therefore, I can't explain it to anyone. Yeah. Without understanding it, it means I really don't know. But this is the place where eclipses take place, and although we don't often think of it that way, there are times when the moon will cover up other planets like Jupiter and Saturn and Venus, and those are eclipses as well. So the zodiac is the ecliptic, and interesting things happen there. I've noticed from the clock that we're about halfway through. Maybe we should do the mid-program break.
All right.
And then hopefully we can remember where we left off and return to the conversation.
I'll put a plastic leaf marker.
All righty.
If I can find myself. Once again, we're holding up everything. Okay.
One more.
There we are. Okay, in case you're just tuning in, this is the Freethought Forum, program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions.
Shows are live most Tuesdays from 5 to 5:55 p.m. on Knoxville Community Access Television Channel 12 or Channel 194, depending upon your local cable network. Tell your out-of-town friends to see us streaming online live at ctvknox.org.
Today's show is live on the 11th of April, and the number, you can call us on the number on the screen and speak with us. While we take a short break, please watch these informative videos about our sponsors.
Is a talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org. If you live in or around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else, well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, meets 1 or 2 times a week. We have evening meetups for fun, food, drink, and conversation. You can find us online at knoxvilleatheist.org. The purpose of ASK is to supply a venue for community camaraderie and outreach to atheists, agnostic, free thinkers, and other like-minded persons in the East Tennessee area. Our Tuesday meeting is going on right now at the still kind of new location, Flats and Taps, 7403 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee. That's about a block east or so of Westtown Mall.
The second Sunday of most months is the Rationalist of East Tennessee Skeptics Book Club. The title of the next book is The Serengeti Rules. The
Serengeti.
Serengeti Rules. The Quest to Discover How Life Works and Why It Matters by Sean Carroll. That should be good. Sunday, May 14th at 2 p.m. 1400 for those. And the public is invited to participate. You may not necessarily have to read the book to attend, but of course it helps. Visit rationalist.org to find the rest of the calendar of the books and join us at our location at Books A Million, 8513 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee. Yeah, clearly. It's across from the Firestone as well.
All righty.
Walker Springs.
I was going to say just a block east of Walker Springs.
Yeah.
There. All righty. Well, let's jump back to our program. We were talking about what is the Zodiac, and we were wanting slide number 14 here next, which I think I was talking about as we spoke. It's a path through the sky where the sun, the moon, and the planets move, and it goes through 12 constellations. So we've got the next slide, which says asterisms versus constellations, Sam. So I assume you've heard of the word asterism.
Yes.
Do you recognize aster, what that might be?
I correlate it to sky movement.
Okay.
Essentially.
Yeah, and astrology is making reference to the same thing. There's that punctuation mark where we draw the lines that looks kind of like a splat. That's a what?
That's astrum.
An asterisk.
Asterisk, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And it means star-like, or star. So an asterism is an im of stars, and then we've got constellation. And a lot of people use the word constellation to mean, and what's right over your head there, Rev, is a well-known constellation. That's Leo. And so a lot of people will think, well, okay, those lines that form that sort of hooking circle over your head here, yeah, that hooks around. Yeah. But the constellation is actually an area in the sky. the asterism, oh, and constellations are official. In the early 20th century, the astronomical community defined regions in the skies with well-defined boundaries, demarked by north-south lines that are constellations. The patterns where we make these like little stick figures where we connect the dots, there's nothing official about them, and they're referred to as asterisms. If we move to the next slide, number 15, we can maybe help see what this Leo the Lion is all about. Why, look, we see that the circle of stars is kind of the mane of the lion, and then there's this elongated thing that's moving off further, and finally a triangle that narrows down. That's like the hindquarters of the lion. And now that you've seen that, if you see it in the sky, you'll look at it and say, oh yeah, that's not bad. Yeah. Now, a fun thing about learning your way around the sky is, with the Zodiac, is then the sky becomes familiar and you'll know what to point your telescope at. So if we look at the lion there, right here, behind his hindquarters, there's some text. Now, we can't read that, but I'm going to work from memory here. I believe that says M65 and 66. The M stands for Messier. Messier is a Frenchman who, in the 1700s, working in Paris, had a small telescope, and he was all excited about finding comets. Because comets are something in the sky that changes. A lot of what's in the sky, as I said earlier, doesn't change during the course of a human life. But comets do. And around the 1700s, they'd become pretty convinced that comets were not part of the Earth or its atmosphere, that it was somewhere out there amongst the stars, and it was moving around. And that made it interesting. And Charles Messier would spend the nights looking for these things. But it was possible to run into things in the sky that were little fuzzy patches, but if you watched them long enough, well, they didn't move. But you could waste a lot of time at them saying, well, I found a fuzzy patch, I better see if it's moving, and now you're spending days at it, revisiting it, and finally, well, it doesn't move. So he began to make lists of things in the sky that are not comets. And those two things are entries on his list. And his list turns out to be a list of things that are interesting and fun to look at. Those are galaxies. And you can see them from a dark sky site using binoculars. In fact, a pair of binoculars is similar to the kind of optical instrument he had. I think he had something that was running more magnification, but in terms of the light gathering ability, a pair of 10 by 50 binoculars is a starting point. And I've seen many galaxies that are on Messier's list in binoculars, and I first locate them with binoculars to kind of figure out, all right, where they are relative to some brighter stars so that I can better point a telescope at it. So by learning the Zodiac, we can then recognize the star patterns, and then pretty soon within the star patterns, they become familiar landmarks. Alrighty, so let's advance to the next slide, which is number 17, and we're going to revisit the point we just talked about. So, asterisms versus constellations. I'd like you to remember that an asterism is a connect the dot-like pattern, whereas a constellation is a region that, or a perimeter that bounds a region. And if we look at this map of the United States, we can see the outlines of the states and the interstate system. So especially in the western United States, a lot of the boundaries are north, south, east, west line segments. Utah is like that. I think Arizona is like that. Nevada is almost like that, but it's got one diagonal.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. And so the state boundaries are constellations. Now, the cities are connected by interstates. So the interstates are the asterisms. They're the dot patterns. And in fact, you can actually see within the interstate system of the United States a strong, east, west, north, south arrangement that happens, once again, especially in the western states, because the western states are less populous, and the interstate was therefore going through large regions without cities sort of randomly placed, and so they end up having more straight line like arrangements because the geography of the states is laid out more grid like. It's not as driven by waterways or mountain ranges in the same way that the eastern United States was back when waterways were the principal means of transport for goods. Alrighty, so you think you'll remember what asterisms are versus constellations?
Yes.
Alrighty, well, let's see what slide 18 is all about. It's reminder time.
Yep.
Can you do it again?
Right. Okay, so the Rambull twins, crab liverish. Scaly scorpions often are good water fish.
All right, and if we look at that circle, we'll now see most of those animals. Right over the earth there is the crab, and then following the crab is the lion.
Lion.
And what comes after the lion? That was the liverish.
Liverish, lion. I do this without looking.
So
really bad.
So we got the L for the lion and verish, the V.
Liverish. Okay, so the scaly.
Yeah, it's not. The scale is in between. So the liverish is one word that's doing the job of two. We're looking for the V in Virgo.
Okay.
Oh, and Virgo is a maiden or virgin, and it's an interesting part of the sky. There's not a lot of stars there, but the stars that are there form a bit of a sort of a hoop or a cup, and centered and a little bit high in that cup is the Virgo galaxy cluster. And you can point a telescope into there and with a wide field of view see, half a dozen galaxies in one field of view. And with more magnification, you'll of course make the galaxies larger, but then you'll see fewer of them as you zoom in. But it's a really neat part of the sky, and it's a part of the sky that's visible tonight, for instance. The sun is probably in Taurus right now. The reason I say that is I had to do the Rambull twins crab liverish. So in March, when the equinox happens, the sun is in Pisces. We need to talk about Aries versus Pisces. It's somewhere here in the last 10 minutes. And so that was in mid-March. By mid-April, which we're kind of coming up on, it's moved into the next constellation, which is Aries. So after Pisces, we come into Aries. The opposite side of the sky from Aries is going to be something like Virgo and or Libra. It'll be whatever's up at about midnight. And so on a spring night, when it's cool, when it's clear, it's often cool, is the time when you can go out and see galaxies outside our own. It's a beautiful time. It's not necessarily the best time for beginners because finding galaxies is more challenging. They're dim. And to first-time viewers, they may not seem as impressive. Part of it is that it always helps if you've learned more about them, maybe seen photographs. Then when you see them with your own eye, it means more. Alrighty.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that as well. I'll probably wait for the last little bit, but just about the scale of things and with what we can see and so on.
So I think I did mention earlier that the seasons are shifting relative to the zodiac. When the Greeks invented this system, the beginning of spring was happening in Aries. The beginning of spring is when the sun, during the winter, the sun is lower in the sky. It's actually below the celestial equator, which is the center of the sky relative to how the Earth turns. So the day that the sun crosses the celestial equator and climbs above is also the day when the length of the day is longer than the length of the night. Now, that's ignoring atmospheric effects. The atmosphere bleeds light over. And that is called the spring equinox, and that used to happen in Aries. But it now happens in Pisces because the Earth's rotational axis is actually like a top, and it sweeps out a cone over a long period of time. It's 26,000 years for it to sweep out a full cone. If we rounded that down to 24,000 years, and if we have 12 signs of the zodiac, that means that every about 2,000 years, it's going to move from one sign of the zodiac to another. Which is to say that, and since there are 12 months in the year, the seasons are divided into 12. It means that every 2,000 years, we've sort of slipped into a different month for the seasons as well, relative to the pattern of stars in the sky. And if you make calendars for a long period of time, you'll notice this and figure it out. The ancient Egyptians had figured it out as well, because they'd been making calendars for a long time. The Egyptian civilization was at a state of high cultural sophistication for like 3,000 years. So they had time to slip one whole sign of the zodiac plus another half. Alrighty, we've got about 6 minutes left. Let's jump to slide 19 and see what that reminds us to talk about. So remember what I said about the constellations. These are regions in the sky that were agreed upon in the early 20th century. Well, it turns out that a portion of the sky called Ophiuchus up here has part of its boundary down here on this line, which is coming across, which is the zodiac. So the sun actually traverses through it, in between Scorpio, which is just to the side of you, and this here, which is Sagittarius. Sagittarius, does that look like anything?
Is it the Archer?
It is an Archer. Yeah. That doesn't look like an Archer. To me, that looks, it's a teapot. You see it? There's a little bottom, there's a little spout, little handle, and it's a beautiful little thing in the sky. Once you've seen it as a teapot, it's trivially easy to find. And you can see it this time of year, but you have to wait up until almost sunrise. If we wait about 3 months, then it'll be up at midnight. And if we wait about 6 months, it'll be an asterism in the evening sky. All right. And so it's an artifact that the constellations were made official in the early 20th century, and they didn't feel a strong reason to respect the wishes of the astrologers and make the outlines or boundaries of the constellations respect the nonsense that is astrology. What's more is the actual time spent by the sun in each constellation in the sky is irregular because the boundaries were not set up on exact 30-degree intervals, which is what it would take if you wanted to have 12 equally spaced constellations dividing the circle of the sky into 12 equal pieces.
And it also reminds me about how we've also had different calendar systems over the year. I think currently we're using what in most cases is the Gregorian
It's called
calendar.
Gregorian.
But before then, it went through a bunch of phases, and there weren't always 12 months. There were different numbers, and there were different who was in power changed. And
Well,
so on
when
and so
Julius Caesar conquered ancient Egypt, remember I said the Egyptians have been making calendars for a long time. When he conquered ancient Egypt, he adopted their calendar system, and we call it the Julian calendar. And it had 12 months. It had a leap day every 4 years, and it's pretty good, but it's not perfect. What happens is that every 4 centuries there's 3 extra days, and so it's slow. It's now creeping out of sync with the seasons at a much slower rate. If you don't put leap days in every quarter, every year, you go out of sync with the seasons very fast because, if a long human life was 100 years, you'd have 75 days worth of air, and so that's months worth of air. So you've got to do something. So the Julian calendar was adopted a little bit before BC, and by the time the Gregorian change came along, there was an error that had accumulated of 11 days. So the Catholics made an adjustment of 11 days. Protestants, being stubborn, waited a couple more centuries, and they had to make an adjustment of 13 days when they finally did it. And what it is, they had to drop days because there were too many leap year days. We're coming close to it. Let's grab the last slide there. I guess are we on 19? So what is the zodiac? It is a circle in the sky, is a path through the sky where eclipses occur, and it is a celestial coordinate system. All right, slide number 20. 21. Viewers can go to the Freethought Forum Facebook page, and there's a PDF file there that you can download. Rev's mostly blocking it, but it's got a summary of today's show, and it has a description of what the zodiac is, and down at the bottom is that mnemonic. Why don't you read the mnemonic one last time?
The rambull twins, crab liverish, scaly scorpions often are good waterfish.
All right. If you come to one of the star parties, are you going to remember that?
By then, I think, after all the times I've fumbled it, I think I'll remember it.
All righty. Well, we're coming up on the end of the hour. You want to grab host one's script?
All right, in case you're just...
It's time to start wrapping things up.
Yes. Yes, time to start wrapping up. Grab your pen and paper. This has been Atheist Society, Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society in Knoxville, Tennessee, Rationalists of East Tennessee. Jointly funded.
Oops. You can give us feedback by voicemail at 865-272-9060 or by email at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
You can see the show on Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Knoxville Station, and see us online at ctvknox.org.
The opinions expressed on this show are of the hosts and guests and not any official opinion of ASK or RET. We'd like to thank Sam and Leah for technical support, the staff at CTV Knox, and all of our viewers.
Nuns who identify with no religion are the fastest growing religious group in America, right here in East Tennessee. Atheist Society in Knoxville, Rationalists of Tennessee are based right.
Fun fellowship, because you're not alone.